Hello and welcome to On Landscape. I'm here with Quintin Lake, who has just recently finished a rather large walk around the perimeter of the United Kingdom. Hello, Quintin.
Hi, Tim. Nice to talk.
Indeed. I know we were supposed to be meeting up. Various things got in the way when you were passing by one of the more complicated bits of coastal walking around Loch Leven and Loch Linney. But I believe you had quite a good time going around that area and then through Ardnamurchan.
I did. Yeah. I think Ardnamurchan, no doubt, would my highlights of the whole journey. I think it's so remote and beautiful.
Yeah. Did you, out of interest, did you have to walk down the A82 while you were going up towards Fort William?
I did, and that would be without a doubt the most dangerous bit of road of the whole journey, because there's quite a few dangerous bits of road. I have sort of high vis, but it was just had to wait so long for there to be no traffic, which, as you know, takes a while.
Busy road. But we're not starting there. Whereabouts did you start at?
The whole journey?
Yeah.
Yeah, I started on the steps of St Paul's,
fantastic!
And then walked clockwise, so all the south coast, Jurassic coast, and then Wales, a bit of Cumbria. I've never seen the coast of Cumbria, and then 200 days in Scotland, and then back to London on the east coast.
Wow! And let's go backwards a little bit and ask you, why walking? Is this something you just decided one day I'm going to try and do a walk, or has it been something you've done a lot of in the past?
I really love it, but I suppose I walked from John O'Groats to Glasgow with my mum when I was 10 in a school holiday, and I just kind of thought that was normal to spend a month walking. And then when I was 20, I walked from Lansdowne to John O'Groats for charity. But funnily enough, I'd seen walking as something I did recreationally, and photography as something separate. And then about 10 years ago, I did a walk from the source of the Thames to London, and the photos I took there were I felt I was starting to develop a much stronger language I felt was mine. And then I walked from the source of the Severn to the sea, and then the coastal bit was so fascinating and enabled me to get really excited about seeing the British landscape uniquely. Because the backstory for me is I'd always gone to exotic places, kind of Iran or Peru or the Arctic, to find my landscape images, and I felt that walking in the coast opened it up to me so that I was seeing it afresh.
And why the coast? Why the coast? Why was it different?
I think it has so many stories in a very short amount of time. I mean, I think it's maybe the geology means that topography varies so fast in Britain that it sort of unfolds at a walking pace. So I felt that it's almost like a beautiful piece of music that you can have a week with a certain theme, and then the next week has another theme, and it's very sort of epic the way that it unfolds to me. And then also the weather is so extreme, and I think most of my pictures are really pictures of the weather in a way, and the coast accentuates that.
Well, that's definitely what Britain is quite famous for.
Yeah, yes. Yes.
Hence a major topic of conversation. Interesting that you say that as well, because we see quite a few Scandinavians walking in Scotland, and we ask them, why Scotland? You've got amazing mountains in Norway or Sweden, and they say, yes, but it doesn't change like it does here. We can, you can go around the corner and you get something fresh. Every mountain looks slightly different. And that was quite interesting, because it is right in Scotland. You must have seen the landscape changing dramatically as you cross the Geological, the Great Divide and the Great Glen.
It's really radical. Yes, yeah, and all the peninsulas, which have a really unique character.
So let's come on to the photographs, and this is a big zipper looking through the landscape. Whereabouts are we looking at?
That's right. So this is Barmouth Bridge in Wales, and we're looking towards Cadair Idris, and I just really love the unity. It looks, I think if you took the bridge away, it'd be weaker, and if you took the landscape away, it'd be weaker. And I really love this harmony of the tones and of the man-made and the natural.
It's a lovely, strong architectural form running through there. But not imposing, as you say. It doesn't look like a modern structure. I presume it's quite old.
Yeah, I think it's Victorian. I think it's even timber. I think it's it's kind of quite fascinating, because you can walk next to where the train goes. So I was just about to walk over it, to get to Barmouth that evening.
Oh, can you walk over the bridge?
So you can cycle, you can walk, and the train goes, but that's it. So it's it's wonderful. Yeah.
And the one thing that struck me when I was looking through the pictures, you sent me 20 for this conversation here, but you also sent me 100 little samples. And the obvious thing that stands out is square, which isn't a format that photographers... Well, it's becoming more popular because cameras have it, and obviously in the past it's been popular with 6x6 film. But why did you particularly choose this? Is this a hangover from film days, or is this conscious...
It was. No, it wasn't. I mean, I do think the square is a beautiful format. It sounds almost perverse to have a seascape landscape project in square, but I kind of see the world very geometrically, and kind of a peace and stillness is really important in how I try and create images. And to me, the square, I experimented a bit at the beginning of the project, and the square gave the images a unity, which I felt was important because this project is so massive. It's 445 days of pictures, and I thought the square was a good way to give them unity, and I chose a camera that I could see the viewfinder in square.
And presumably that gave you a consistency in the way you looked at things as well.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. I mean, occasionally it just doesn't work as square, but I kind of almost can't not see the world now in square after having done it for 5 years.
You don't have a background as a graphic designer by any chance, or some related field?
Architecture is what I studied. Yes. So yeah, probably very like straight lines, symmetry. Yes, a lot
strong
of that.
Design elements, indeed. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, what have we got next?
Okay, so I think this selection. I'm only halfway through editing all the pictures from the journey, so it was almost how do I choose 20 pictures to talk about? And my editing criteria for this lot was I wanted everything to actually have the sea in it, but also to talk about cliche and what's unique and what isn't unique, and how you find a language's images, and some of these I'm actually not sure about, and I thought it was quite nice to talk about that openly, and others that I feel are more distinctive. So I think that the previous one is one that I feel 100%
very strong
I love
image.
it. And this is one where so the chalk cliffs of the Seven Sisters in Sussex, kind of iconic piece of landscape, but how do you try and approach it differently? And I think this one, I'm not sure if it's totally successful, but I think it's getting there in being a more unique image. And then the other thing is does an image just convey the place very well, or does it convey a feeling very well? And for me, when I'm editing, it's always a balance of the two. And I think this one is more about conveying the place than the feeling. But I just love walking along there on the kind of green velvet, and it literally feels like you're flying. I can almost understand why some people kind of want to end their life there, because it kind of feels like it wouldn't hurt. It feels like you could just fly off into the ocean. It's sort of a special, strange place.
And that's an interesting one, because a lot of your images, I mean, in a project of this size, it almost seems inevitable that people will be in the pictures. But when you were thinking about the project, was that a conscious thought?
It was a conscious thought, mostly not to have people in the pictures. I mean, I love the painter Nash's work when he talks about the kind of the strange mystery of the British landscape, and that's really what interests me. And I think when a person is in it, it becomes a different story. You kind of look at them and try and understand them, and it gives a different story, which is interesting. But I almost like the abstract response to a landscape when there's no one in it. So there are a few pictures of people in it, but I almost 90% don't, and that is conscious.
Yeah. When you're doing the trips like this, what sort of length would a single, because you obviously didn't do it all in one go, that would be a little bit too much, and that might be a bit heavy.
Yeah, it was. I did 2 weeks to 9 weeks. So 9 weeks was in Scotland mostly, and 2 weeks was down south. And I'd carry 5 days of food, and I have 5 days of batteries. So my drone and the camera I was completely self-sufficient for 5 days. And then I'd kind of send myself dehydrated food, and either someone will put me up or I'd stay in a hostel, or be to charge up on the 5th day. So that's how I managed the longest stretches.
Or to dry off.
Or to dry off, yes, exactly, and to eat something that wasn't out of a packet.
Yes. So were these pictures from your camera or a drone, or there's a general mix in there?
These shots I'm sharing with you are all from my camera. So I use a Canon 5 DSR, so 50 megapixel, because my prints are often quite big, 1.5 meters.
Yeah, so you're looking at quality. You sacrificed a bit of weight for the.
Yes, it was 5 kilograms of weight that I carried, and then my tent is 850 grams. So that was my priorities.
Yeah, that's the balancing, right? I've just been looking at this one myself for I've got a tarp tent. Yes, similar weight. So. Camera is definitely more important. Definitely.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I experimented with smaller sensor formats, and I just wasn't getting the detail I needed for the prints with anything less.
Okay. Next picture.
Okay. So this would be something where it's probably it's a very common photographic subject for photographers in England.
I'm not going to say where's that.
So that's for those that maybe don't know, that's Bamber Castle, but it was just so exquisite, the light, and there's very little processing on that, a single frame, a little bit of gradient filter, but it was just so gorgeous, and the tonality is so subtle that I felt it elevated it to be a kind of distinctive picture.
You couldn't really have better light there, I don't think.
No, this would be impossible. And I think I was actually sadder leaving Scotland, returning to England, than I was at the end of the journey, because when you're camping and the right to roam, I feel that the land really is yours, and it's a really beautiful feeling of that you belong, which ironically is, as I'm English, that in England I don't feel when I'm outside. And kind of when I was camping, I'd have to stealth camp and pitch very late and break tent early in the morning.
It's a funny psychological thing, but I've noticed this about the difference between Scotland, even from walking in the Lake District, is there is a sense that of belonging to the land.
It's true.
Arrives.
It's true. Yeah.
And I like the freedom that gives you mentally, even though you have the freedom anyway to walk in a lot of places.
Psychologically, it's a big difference, isn't it? It's a big difference. Yeah, and especially as a photographer, because I tended to want to pitch the tent to maximise the light at the dawn and the dusk. It's easier for those horrible early dawns if you just have to unzip the tent and kind of crawl out to somehow find that easier than from a nice warm bed.
Yes, definitely. And how many lenses and things do you take as well as accessories? The 5 kilograms probably gives you a couple of lenses, does it?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I took a Jitso traveller tripod with a Really Right Stuff head. That was about 1 kilogram. I took a 16 to 35 f4 lens, so a wide zoom, and then I took a 70 to 300 zoom. And I'd say that most of my pictures are actually on the far end of the zoom. I find that sort of 200, 300 range really, really useful. And then I took a Mavic Air drone, so that's how the 5 kilograms built, and loads of batteries.
Yeah, do I remember you doing an article for us about a 400mm lens project at one point?
I did, yes, I did. And in fact, if weight was no concern, I would have carried that as well. Or yes, I did. Yeah, I did the Ridgeway. Yes. I did all on 400, very compressed landscapes, and I just love that compressed look and the kind of composition choices it gives you in a landscape. Yeah,
definitely,
especially on the coast, because most things are quite a long way away.
Yes,
so it's just practically it's quite hard to get close, and when you do, there's sort of foliage in the way, so that the long distance gives a lot more options.
And where are we going next?
Okay, next with so this is where I started to get excited.
Oh,
this was first snow, first sign of the Highlands. We were talking about the geological fault lines earlier. This would be it. So this is Cambrai, Butte, and Arran in the snowy distance there, and this is just coming up towards Glasgow really. But it felt like the visceral excitement that this is the Highlands and Scotland is coming, and these sort of different layers of completely different terrains is it's just a beautiful thing about being near the coast and seeing these island masses moving around. And actually, again, when you're using the telephoto, you can just by moving just a few centimeters, you can really rearrange the compositional elements in the distance, which is a kind of a nice thing.
Yes, definitely. And out of interest, what was your approach to islands? Were they included or excluded?
they were excluded.
Yeah.
And I think if there was a part 2 of this journey, it would be the Ireland and the islands. But so my journey was 6,600 miles, and including the islands, I think would double it.
I was going to say it was around double. Yes.
Yeah, but I did break the rules every now and again if I fancied it, if it was a small island. So I kind of went to Holy Island, for example, which I'll show some pictures of in a minute.
Oh, okay, yes.
So the kind of the walking islands I included sometimes, but not the bigger ones.
Yes, yeah. And when did you? Was it over a space of 2 years you've done this, or is it more?
It was 5 years, and
years.
It was about a quarter. It started off a quarter of the time, and then I had a shin splints and a torn tendon, and then COVID, so I lost quite a few months. So the last 2 years has been a more intense.
Go on, shin splints and tendons. Tell me more in a second. Go on.
So each took 7 weeks off each journey, and then COVID it was 4 months off.
Yeah.
And it was really important photographically that I did the legs of the journey consistently throughout the year. So it wasn't like I just chose the fine weather. So the winter legs were like 3 or 4 hours walking with a head torch to cover the distance. And although there was physical hardship, I felt generally the photographic quality was higher in the winter. So it definitely paid off. I mean, the kind of really intense contrast of light and especially in Scotland, these amazing reds and purples that you were getting. I kind of got them, and in a way it was easier to work with dawn and dusk because it's not such an insanely early or late time of the day. So I could wake up, have breakfast in the dark, I could start walking a bit in the dark, and then I could be quite alert and ready to do dawn maybe an hour or two later.
Yeah, the low light during the day in Scotland is something to be experienced. I think it just gives you so many hours of good light to play with.
That's right. But conversely, there were some days in the winter where I couldn't believe how dark it was. I was almost like I couldn't get any handheld shots. I'd need kind of 3,600 ISO, and I was going, is the camera broken?
Oh wow!
It was such low light, and that was sort of midday light with a big aperture, and it can be sometimes so gloomy. It's almost astonishing, but actually it can be, with a tripod, it can be very, very atmospheric.
So which stretch did you cover in proper midwinter, when it was, well, not midwinter, let's say February, March, when you get intense snow? And
there was Noida, Ardnamurk,
okay,
the rough band. Wow. So it was the hardest bit in the hardest weather.
Yeah, seriously remote, etc.
Yeah, but I kind of when I came down to Inverary off the mountains, and it was with a head torch, and then the next day I went into the cafe, and the local said, we saw your head torch coming down, and we were a little bit worried, but then you took too long and we went to bed. So that was the kind of ironic Scottish welcome, which that made me chuckle. But it's I mean, it's my favourite bit of Scotland. I think that kind of the rough bounds bit, the kind of Noida, Ardnamurk part. It's so it's just breathtaking. And when I walked up on the peak, I've got a picture of it in a minute, but when you walk up on the peaks from Mallaig and you first see that, it's like it's breathtaking.
Well, let's proceed on the pictures and then see some more.
So this is just I think this is a day beyond in terms of walking from the previous one, and I guess my project was trying to really interrogate what is landscape and what isn't landscape, and its man-made structures are equally fascinating as natural. And this is Gorick Pool that's been photographed by Martin Parr and others. This kind of fairly iconic location in Scotland. But I was there just at the season before it was opening again, so they just painted it, and you can just see the water on the bottom of the pool from the rain, and yet they haven't quite filled it up yet. And I love this, the luminous colour, and then this Scottish sky, this grey sky, and the kind of the real sea and the false sea and the geometry. It's one of my favourite images of the project. This for those different stories it's telling.
I like the idea that the painting blue was supposed to blend in with the sea and the sky, and if it was in the Mediterranean, but it doesn't quite work in Scotland.
No.
So, in terms of walking through towns, did you take many photographs in the towns as well? Was it, or were they places to get over so you can get back into the wild?
I tended to the big towns, Glasgow.
Yeah.
I actually stopped. I spent 4 days photographing them. Places that I was sort of fascinated in. I really wanted the towns to be a big part of it. And some towns I did sort of skirt through, but it was based on just my feeling of whether I wanted to have that as a big part of the project, and because I see the towns as a very big part of the British coast. Yeah. Some of them I did spend a long time in. Yeah.
Safety, I imagine, is a bit of an issue in some of the towns as well. Finding places to camp, or would you tend not to camp?
I tended not to camp.
Yeah.
No, I didn't. I found a hostel or a B&B for the town sections and treated it differently. And also, I didn't want to walk around a town with 20 kilos on my back. Apart from looking a bit strange, it's kind of somehow I don't know. I can walk with that weight through the hills, but somehow in a city it seems to be 3 times more tiring. I don't know why.
I completely agree with that. I don't understand why people tend to. We have people running around the roads around here, and you think, well, you've got all that landscape to run in with nice paths and things, but no. Yeah, it is more tiring, definitely. Okay, next.
Okay, so this is the Pilgrim's Path to Holy Island. So this is a tidal route to go to Lindisfarne, and
I presume that's the moon, is it? Yes.
Yes. So it was kind of one of these extraordinary things that I really wanted to do the Pilgrim's route, but it's I'm travelling alone and it's potentially dangerous if you don't time it optimally, and just by pure chance I was optimally there at just the right time, just as the tide is falling, so you have the maximum time to walk across. And then it was this full moon that was literally guiding me, and I thought, surely it's not a good idea to walk across here at night by yourself, but somehow it felt really safe. I don't know why. It was just because I could literally see under this full moonlight. It was in terms of the experience of it, it was one of the most magical experiences of the whole journey. So you're just following these posts across to the island. You can just see the red light there on the horizon of the island. And then this shelter is for if people get caught out, you can kind of climb up there and go help, or wait for the tide to go down.
So I mean, walking in moonlight is amazing, especially when you've got a surface that reflects a little bit of light. I've done that in the snow before now, and I was amazed at how much you can see. That's
right. Yeah, I think when it reflects, you really can see enough to walk safely. Yeah.
So the Lindisfarne was that a short stop? Because it's quite a beautiful little island in itself.
I just walked on and walked off because I wanted to do the tide both ways. Even the causeway, you have to time it right for the tide. So if I didn't want to get stuck, it was quite a quick stop, and then my journey is completely defined by the weather, and the next day it was actually pretty awful and raining, and even though I try, it's hard to take pictures in those conditions.
Yeah.
But this journey was so long that I kind of relaxed into it. Sometimes I'd research a location, be really excited about it, and then it would just rain, and I'd have to sort of just let it go.
Oh.
And sometimes I would stay an extra day, but I didn't have much leeway in my schedule to do that.
I suppose you really have to end up quite zen about things when you're doing this sort of thing, because you are so reliant on living with what's around you, the weather and the mood.
Yeah, I found it really good for my soul, and I think good for my photography, because I used to be very obsessive about controlling these criteria, and when it didn't quite go right, it was frustrating, and I don't think that's very good for creativity so if you let the chance come in, it's better. But it's also a beautiful thing doing this long walk that I was having to walk in rhythm with the moon and the tide, both to move along and also for photography. So I was always conscious of where the moon and the sun and the tide was, which is I've never had that feeling for a prolonged period in my life before.
Yeah. Okay, we'll go to the next.
Okay, so this is Loch Horn from Knoydart. So this was the winter that we're talking about. It's so exciting, and as you can see, if you sort of envisage once you've got past that croft there around the other side of Loch Horn, how would you follow that coast? And of course you can't really. So you really have to go very high, and that was an exciting kind of new element to the project. And because none of this has got footpaths, I really enjoyed sort of looking at the landscape, looking at the map, going, could I take that, like the ridge there in the mist,
yeah.
which in fact is the way that I went. It was I could follow that ridge halfway down the mountain just below the snow line, and it was quite exciting to sort of figure out how to travel through these landscapes.
Did you become good at spotting animal tracks and little natural paths? Did you after a while?
I did. So certainly I learned not to trust the track thinking someone had walked there, because it's nearly always deer or animal tracks. Yeah. And actually, it was around here I had some lovely animal encounters of I was just cooking my dinner on the stove one night, and a family of otters swam past and then actually walked in front of me. So really magical, because I think I was travelling too, ironically, as I was only going 3 or 4 kilometres an hour, but I was travelling too fast for optimum wildlife encounters. But I did have some otters and sea eagles and things.
So covering that sort of ground, about what, 20k a day?
Oh no. I mean, my averages of the whole journey was 25k.
25k
on the flat.
Yeah.
On the flat it was 40k, but this section in the winter, some days it was 9 or 10, and I'd be weeping with despair at how slow it was. and that's literally moving from dawn to dusk. I mean, it's just so slow and difficult. But I mean, 15 was a good day in these conditions. And I'm doing 3 or 4 hours of photography, and bearing in mind a lot of that is the walking is at dark. That's why the distances are quite short.
Yeah. So you didn't really have much
it's
time.
pathless.
Didn't really have much time to sit and look at the view and relaxing from the tent, I presume, then.
No, I mean that only really happened in the summer. I mean, it's the beautiful thing about the long that I was in Caithness in the summer, and it was almost the simmer dim up there of being able to kind of walk past midnight and really beautiful light, and I kind of it's great. So that's when you can really just take 2-3 hours for a meal and just totally relax, and then walk to midnight if you want to.
And in terms of accommodation, did you find any bothies on the coastal walk? I'm not sure if there are many. I'm not familiar.
There's a few. I love bothies. I think I stayed in 5. I probably had lunch in about another half dozen. So there are definitely some. There's a couple near or in Cape Wrath, and there were a few. If there was a bothy, I really always tried to make sure I stayed there. I
think we might have a picture of it for Square Window later on. Is that a bothy? Yes.
That's a bothy. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's Uag's bothy, which is probably my favourite. That was on the coast. So this is Shugamoto's abstract pictures of the sea are one of my favourites, and I kind of thought when I started this that was the last word of that kind of picture, and I was a bit surprised that there's so many strange conditions of the sea that fascinated me, that I've kind of got a series of these seascapes that in some ways are my favourite images of the whole project. But this was this is kind of a break in the cloud out of sight, and the sun was just shining on the horizon, and this is the kind of picture that looks very calming, but the light only lasted a few seconds, and this was a 300mm telephoto shot of the Irish Sea from Dumfries and Galloway, very strange and evocative, I think, and it kind of almost like a Rothko, isn't it?
It is very much so. Yes. So have you printed many of these already, or?
Some. I mean, I tend to print mostly when I get a print order, because there's so many. A few of them I'm printing if I don't do my own printing, so I go through a bureau. So there's a kind of quite a cost involved in it. So, but I'm printing some of them. Yes, yeah.
Okay.
But I'm still quite embryonic in the full colour of the project. So. So I take about 300 pictures a day, of which I reckon 10 are average, and maybe every 3 days I'm getting one image which is a sort of top draw image. But even with that level of editing, I'm still ending up with hundreds of images on this project. So the creative editing choices is going to be a big project, which I'm in the process of. So like this selection that I'm sharing now is sort of embryonic of how that's evolving.
Because that's difficult, isn't it? Choosing pictures for various reasons and leaving things out that are
that's
attractive.
Right. Because often you want it to work as a set with maybe a similar tonality or a story or a rhythm of different criteria, and it could be the story or the tone, and that's a whole different thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'm presuming this trip was too big to actually try and consciously think about that in advance.
It was, and actually the first time that I haven't consciously thought about it in advance, and that's probably why I enjoyed it so much. Because normally I had thought about that. I'd thought about the output before I started, whereas this trip I didn't do that.
Okay.
So this is it's an example of where a very unexpected moment of beauty, where I'd almost sort of switched off as a photographer. So this has been this is the Yorkshire coast. I'd had an incredible day, Spurn Point, incredibly beautiful, lots of photography, and then it's this very flat tidal walk towards Hull. You can just see the Humber Bridge on the horizon on the right there. And I'd sort of thought, I was sort of buzzing from a good day of photography. I'd actually put the camera away, and then this just beautiful scene came out when the tide is really low and the tide is down, and then this sort of calligraphic line on the right hand side. That's
an amazing little river, isn't it?
It is. It's stunning. And then it's a busy shipping river as well. So I did there were big container ships moving back and forth at this moment with the sunset. And originally I thought that'd be more interesting. You'd have the ship and the sun and the river, but in the edit I decided it was just too many elements. There were already enough here. I felt that the river and the sun and the tone was enough stories to make it a strong image.
It's a rather special one, that one. Yes.
So now we're back into Wales. So this is again, sometimes it's the experience which is what gives it the juice. Sometimes it's the story, and sometimes it's the mixture. And I kind of felt this was a bit of the mixture, because this is Dylan Thomas's boathouse. So there's an incredible story of imagining the kind of poetry and the life that he had there with this special light. And it's ironic because he wrote all these poems about curlews and things, and the sound when I was there was helicopter gunship fire. The kind of the island there in the distance is a firing range. So this sort of you go with this sort of romantic idea of what it is going to be like, and it's something completely different.
It's the great thing about photography. Sometimes the sounds are just completely not what you would think.
That's right. That's right.
Talking about this recently about photographs of waterfalls, and the realizing that the sound of the waterfall, the one next to it, is actually quite violent and aggressive.
That's right. Yeah. I've thought it'd be quite interesting to do sound recordings for an exhibition. Have you done anything like that? Because you do a lot of sound, don't you?
We've done a little bit of that, but we have a couple of projects coming up which are about the mountain behind the house. And part of that is going to be an audio side of things. Trying to choose our moments. We should have done it during lockdown when there was no traffic going down the A82, but there you go.
Too late for that now.
There are quiet moments. Well, it might be too late. We don't know what's going to happen yet, do we? Could have another repeat. But definitely the sounds. I mean, presumably the sound of the sea was quite a constant accompaniment as well.
And it sounds so different when you've got the susurrus. Is that the right pronunciation? Yes. Susurrus, especially when the shingle is kind of pulled back and forward, and sometimes the tent was often very near the strand line. So it was always I kind of liked the feeling of just camping just high enough to not let the water come in, but I was never. Even though I kind of calculated it quite carefully, I still would wake up at sort of 3 a.m. just to poke the torch out to check. And sometimes the water was just there 2 meters away. Yeah.
You never know, do you, with the pressures?
You never know. You never know. Yeah. Well, that's right. Exactly. So, this, I have a difficult relationship with sunsets in photography, of whether it's cheesy or whether it's beautiful, or I don't have a hard and fast rule about either way, but I think when it's distinctive, it can be sublime, and this is really unusual, and I think because it's Snettisham in Norfolk, so this is on the east coast, and generally in the east coast you don't get any sunsets because the sun's setting the wrong way.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this is the one bit where you get the sun setting west, because what we're looking at here is the wash, and the wash seems to do something really strange optically, like it sort of reflects the light like a bowl, perhaps. I don't know what it was, but there was something cool. I mean, this was the most spine-tingling sunset, and again, a big big sequence of images of which was the best moment, and I felt the best moment was here when the sun had actually gone, and again there's barely any processing here. In fact, I think I might have taken the saturation down.
Yeah,
I think it was it was almost too much.
Oh, it's incredible skies and the cloud formations, and that, having moved up here from Hull to Scotland, I've realised quite how the weather looks different. The skies just look different.
They do look different,
in different parts of the country, and this is very, I suppose, characteristic in a way of these long stretched out weather systems. Yeah.
I do find the west coast seemed to be better for photography because the light seemed to be better at the right times of day.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's just a subjective thing because I'm more switched on in the evening perhaps, but yeah. This was more sort of document the joy of the journey. I think this is sort of just the exhilaration of waking up each morning and having another stretch of path ahead of me like this, and the thrill of a kind of a new headland to explore, and wonderful. I mean, the Welsh coast path. The only problem is it's not long enough. I think it takes about 2 to 3 months to walk, depending how you do it. But it's very, very good, very varied.
I was going to ask you, because is it the Wales? Is it a new path that they've just linked up, where you can walk the whole coast of Wales?
Well, the government just decided we're going to do this, and the Welsh government, and they did it, I think, in a year.
Right.
So I think it's just extremely well done, and I don't know enough about the history about which bits are historic or not.
Yeah.
But it's a really interesting variety of dramatic scenery like this to industry and the southern bits, and it's a really great walk.
Which parts of the Welsh coastal walk did you enjoy the most?
Well, this is Ceredigion, so kind of mid-west part, but I think it would be kind of Gower, Pembrokeshire. No prizes for originality saying that, but I mean that is so gorgeous, and the Worm and the Dylan Thomas Burns bit we saw before.
Yeah, it's a dramatic area.
And the Lean Peninsula is very special in the northwest. But I mean, I think it's almost a topological truism that all the peninsulas are pretty special because people tend not to travel in them to go anywhere else, so they tend to stay more historically and ecologically precise.
They seem to collect different sorts of people as well. I've noticed Ardnamurchan seems to collect misfits and
it's brilliant,
strangers.
Isn't it? Yes, brilliant. I love it. I quite agree. And Ardnamurchan is probably the most extremely remote on foot because you have that one road going to the point on the south, and the north is pretty hard to get to, and there's just literally no paths and no roads, so it's a really great feeling of wilderness. And I love that caldera on the west near Sana Bay, and you get a feel of it, don't you? You get a feel of the volcanic caldera.
Definitely. We went climbing on the Gabbro there.
Really? Is it climbing worthy?
It's amazing. It's such fantastic grippy rock.
Nice.
The structure of it is beautiful. And the climb we did was a great geological name for a climb called Greta Gabbro, which I
that's brilliant.
Quite like the poetry of.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So this is back in Scotland. So this is the Minch from Stewart Point, and I think this was a lot of these pictures are the moment before getting drenched, and this was the moment before getting drenched. But I love that sense of kind of fortitude and holding on that those crofts have there under that big sky.
Definitely, that's a remote area. They really do get hit by the weather as well.
Yeah.
Talking about that, you can obviously, having done this, you can give people some advice on what kit to remain dry and comfortable in the inclement weather of the United Kingdom.
Well, I wouldn't go ultra light.
No,
would be my. So I mean, I started off as a ultralight backpacker. I was wearing running shoes, Cuban fiber, super light kit.
Yeah.
And then I generally migrated to heavyweight winter Scottish gear. So I had kind of Gore-Tex Pro and leather boots by the end of it. But a lot of that is just about the durability, because I was just replacing expensive kits so quickly that it wasn't funny. I mean, I literally shredded my Cuban fiber backpack just by wearing it out. And it just became too expensive. But I did find with the shell garments that the durability was genuinely useful, and I just wasn't getting sheltered enough with the ultralight stuff. But it's very subjective, isn't it? About what works for you.
It is, and it is about how long you're in it. Very little is effective for long periods in the proper Scottish downpours.
Yeah, I was almost never dry, so everything had to work damp and wet, and I didn't expect to remain bone dry. It was just that so it was a lot of merino wool, things like that, so that I'd be damp but functional. And then I'd strip all that off before getting in the sleeping bag, and then put the wet stuff back on in the morning. So that was a good way to get going quickly.
Well, that would wake you up by the time you put it on.
That would wake you up. Yeah. You can't dawdle about if you do that.
And the same with the cameras. Is it just dry bags for the cameras, or did you do anything different?
Multiple dry bags. So I carried the camera in 2 different dry bags, and then I used the third as a rucksack liner, and I carried a bandana to sort of wipe down the camera before putting it in. I actually found things like the strap was quite a problem, because if you're carrying the camera in the wet, the strap kind of gets soaked, and then you put that in the bag, and that brings the moisture in. So I kind of would keep the strap poking out of the dry bag.
It's like a fancy sous vide for your camera, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay,
so this is again skirting the cliche, hopefully the right side, but I just had to include it because it's my favourite part of the whole journey. So this is the first glimpse of Naidart, kind of climbing up from Mellaig. I'm about to drop down to Ardingty. This is Loch Nevis, and this is a hail bow, the first time I'd experienced it. So and that's the hail seemed to just make the bow just extremely strong contrast.
It's incredibly intense. We had one of those recently over the river outside the house, and I was shocked by how bright they actually are, especially against dark cloud backgrounds.
That's right. Yeah.
So
where do you sit about subjects like this?
I used to be a bit, I don't want to say judgmental, but I've stopped being like that. I think as long as there's something original about it, there's nothing wrong with cliched aspects of beauty. I've just been
that's how I've evolved too. Yes, I would. Yeah. If you'd asked me 5 years ago, I would have never included a sunset or a rainbow in my portfolio.
Yeah, they are. I've just been reading it. I'm trying to start a series with Joe Cornish and David Ward about composition, and as part of that, looking at the history of painting and art. And the Hudson River School was a really interesting section. So we've got 4 or 5 books about the Hudson River School, and it's really what they did was, where would painting have gone had in Europe if Impressionism and Modernism didn't arrive? And that's really what they've got. And you look at it, and it's very photographic, and they're looking at these amazing sunsets and rainbows. And I think some ways this is where the American cliche comes from. But you cannot argue with the fact that done well, they are amazing, and they're amazing because they're amazing to experience in reality. And if you can get that impression across without resorting to an overall cliche, it may have things that are considered cliche elements, then I'm all for it.
I think it's like I have sort of like the Turner test. Would Turner have painted it? And then if the answer is yes, then it's going to be all right.
Yeah, I like that. That works. Okay.
So this is Cardiff Flats. Again, it was a grey day approaching Cardiff that seemed not very auspicious for photography, but then this storm came, and this tonality is beautiful. And this is a color image, and again, it's exciting photographic because it was all changing quite quickly. The cloud was blowing past fast, so it was changing the reflected light in the foreground on this mud. So it's, and I find the balance really pleasing on this.
Yeah. Sorry, I've just got a something that's just popped up and gone beep, so I'm going to have to edit that little bit out. When you've been, let me start again. when you're looking at planning the walk, how far did you go in terms of committing to the whole of the coastline and trying to track it? Because I'm sure a few people have seen the fractal approach to the UK landscape. In fact, that if you follow it accurately, it's infinitely long.
That's right. Yes. You mean how did I decide whether this was the edge or not the edge when I was walking it?
Yes, essentially yes.
Well, in England, I tended to choose the footpath that was closest to the edge, and Wales, and in Scotland, it was the closest that I could walk without killing myself. So I had to make a judgment call about what was safe or wasn't safe, and then there's lots of the coast which is out of bounds. There's a firing range or industrial areas, but it was the closest that I could practically get to. But I was about as possessive, I think, as is possible to be in Scotland in terms of getting close. I mean, if it was hard for me, that was just a good challenge, and I'd just figure out how to do it. Recently, just a month ago, I'd walked to Foulness Island via the Broomway. So that was the Broomway alone, the most dangerous footpath in Britain. Working out how the tide would work to get there and back all in a day. I spent weeks figuring that out.
Yeah, that's quite a scary little walk. It's quite a long walk.
9 kilometres, yeah.
Yeah. So is that just in a tidal zone, or is it in the mean tidal zone?
It's in. Sorry, I don't quite follow.
Does it follow the sort of mean water line, as in like the midpoint between tides?
Oh, the good question. I don't. It's you've got about 3 to 4 hours where you're not going to get swept away, but it's probably close. It's very strong. It's strongly affected by the pressure and the wind.
Yeah.
So I got meteorological advice from an expert, as well, and you have to navigate perfectly because one side is sinking mud and the other side is unexploded ordnance. But I think I think there's lots of mystique about it. But I think logically, if you navigate perfectly and you're very serious about the weather and the tide, it's okay.
Did you cut it fine, or was it?
No, it was too risky to cut it fine. So I literally walked down as the tide was. I actually waded a little bit at the beginning, so that I was going as the tide was dropping down,
following it out.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
Okay.
So this is for digging for bait in Gan Beach in Pembrokeshire, but it's really, we were talking earlier about impressionism, but it's this kind of these blues and these gorgeous warm.
I think that's fabulous. Really fabulous.
I mean, I think if people see a picture and they go, is that especially when it's printed, and I print on photo rag, so there's no sense of digital quality at all.
Yeah.
That if people are looking at it and they're going, is that a painting? For me, that's the ultimate compliment.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's so. Is it gorse or is it flower crop rape? In the background, the reflected light.
That is a really good question. I don't think I can't remember. I think it was just autumn bracken.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Brown, and I think it's just the crazy colour is just the sunset tone. It wasn't rape. No, it was quite mountainous around there.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it looks like it should be like a Singer Sargent painting or something.
Yeah. And also that thing because I don't live anywhere near the coast and the whole culture of people digging for bait and fishing and the fishing competitions and how people choreograph that and all the knowledge people have about these very tiny bits of landscape is a beautiful thing, I think.
Did you get to talk to many people? I presume quite a few, but did you have any interesting encounters with people along the way?
Many. I mean, most of the time it was pretty solitary, but I did talk to a lot of fishermen and farmers, and I met an amazing farmer in Dumfries who'd surrounded by these ruined crofts, and when he was younger they were all inhabited by people working on his land, and now they'd all left, and then it was too far away for some tourists to be interested in renting them, so it felt like he was the kind of last of the Mohicans. Kind of amazing feeling of talking to people like that, and yes, I mean, and talking to fishermen about how they judge it and how they look for where the seals catch the fish to learn where to go. So yes, I liked the conversations. Yeah, my diary was full of these chats.
Yeah, and I presume the accents must change dramatically as you're going around certain parts.
Yeah, sometimes it's incredible. You can, even in one day, you can get, especially going from Wales to Liverpool, and then because Liverpool is so intense but quite geographically distinct, and then you've got Lancashire and Cumbria, so that was really very rapid. And also what people call everything, whether it's a balm or a bun or whatever it is, it's ordering kind of a sandwich is, you need to quickly change the lingo.
Okay, we go to the next.
Okay, so this is Stout Bay in Glamorgan, so this is pretty near England, really, on the border on the south. But this thumbprint of geology being exposed, and this was something that I kind of learnt was really important to plan it, and Google Maps was very useful. Satellite maps was really useful to get a feeling of it was this how important the tide was for photography, because it would be quite unremarkable if the tide was up there lapping against the cliffs.
So you did schedule slightly for some locations in terms of where the tide was going to be, etc.
I scheduled quite carefully, but then I accepted that I'd have to completely bin the idea.
Yeah.
If it came down to it, and then I'd sort of plan the next leg with satellite, with the maps. I plot the map with the intended campsite based on my assessment of the map, and then I would just adjust that if I needed to.
And given that the UK is probably the founding place for much of geology, because of the way the land changes all the way. I mean, it's a slice through pretty much every geological area.
That's right, yeah.
Did your interest in geology get perked as you
Absolutely. I'm fascinated now. Yeah, I'm fascinated. And incredibly ignorant, but fascinated. I mean, it's definitely one of those things where the more you dig into it, no pun intended, the more you realise you just don't know anything about it, don't you?
Very much so,
But I love listening to someone that knows a lot about it, yeah.
We've wanted to include an article about geology for a while, but finding
that would be good.
Finding somebody who can talk geology without doing the whole chemistry microscopes thing is hard. We've got a guy from Glen Nevis who's one of the Glen Nevis Trust people who said he might do it.
Yeah, that was the most fascinated I've been in, and the what's it called, the Geo Park.
That's right. Yeah.
And there's the visitor centre in Fort William. I found that very accessible and fascinating. That seemed to be just the right level of knowledge for the layman, and the notices around where you're explaining what you're looking at. That was good. Yeah.
Hopefully, I mean they've just hopefully got their funding again. But yeah, he's the guy who did all that. The guy I'm hoping to speak to. So that should be quite good.
I'll look out for that.
Brilliant.
So this is another favourite. So this is Cromarty Firth, and it's kind of interesting story because depending who you ask, some people say they're parked there for when a more efficient drilling technique comes out, and other people are saying they're waiting to be scrapped.
Okay.
So it seems very but it's just, I mean, I don't think I really want to live with that looming over me. Would you?
Peculiar, isn't it? No, not at all.
But I found it's just as an image, it's such a strange. It makes you really realise how huge they are, and then they're also normally offshore. But also in terms of this journey as a snapshot in time, where things that seem quite fixed actually aren't. Like two power stations I photographed extensively are now no longer there, and then kind of in Holderness, bits of the road that I photographed are literally no longer there. They're in the sea.
Oh, wow.
And then these kind of cultural things where, how long is the oil industry going to last?
Yeah.
And perhaps if we see this in 10 years, it's going to be kind of quite looking at a horse and cart or something delivering groceries. I don't know, but it's but also so ingenious and clever how they make these things and keep them safe. And I think these are the jack-up rigs where there's a kind of ratchet system that lifts the drilling bed up and down.
I used to live in Aberdeen, and I used to see these floating past sometimes when I went to Forest.
Yeah. So you must have seen some changes in Aberdeen then.
At the time, yes, yeah.
So was it boom time when you lived there?
It was 90. Would have been 95, 94. So it was doing pretty well. There was lots and lots of oil workers drinking and celebrating on their offshore leave days.
Really, yeah. No, it still feels very affluent. I thought,
I made the mistake of getting to know somebody on an on shift and somebody on an off shift. So when they went back on, stopped drinking for 4 weeks, the other guys came down. I'm like, that's not healthy. But,
is it 4 weeks they do? I thought it was 2. Or...
They do different shifts depending on where they're working.
Yeah.
And things.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is a banded clouds with a glimpse of Wales from Devon. So I just thought this was such a strange and beautiful thing. And
again, that has that Sugimoto Rothko quality to it.
But that's right.
Texturally very different there.
Yeah, things like this work really well as large prints, or they come into their own. You can really get lost in it.
Yeah. If you were going to have to point your camera in one direction or the other, would it be the sea or the land?
In terms of this project?
Yeah, if you had to commit to one or the other, which one was more fascinating to you? That's like radio one question for you.
No, and this project was definitely the sea, because that was the thing, because the project like this where there's so many repeating elements like headlands or piers going off into the horizon or kind of groins with waves lapping over them, and there's sort of these photographic tropes. You get very refined when you're seeing them hundreds of times. You get refined as to what's unique or what isn't unique.
Yes.
And the horizon out to sea, I would not get bored of that. I mean, there's that artist in Northumbria. He's got this Twitter account, Sea Window and Caster, and he's photographing the sea every day, twice a day, and it's a brilliant Twitter account because it's just so fascinating. It's fascinating. Just twice a day, picture the sea, but it's so varied from the same window.
I like that.
Mm-hmm. And then we're on to the final image, which is these drinks on the shore in Ferring in Sussex. It just seems something so wonderfully British and bizarre about that. In fact, the artist that made these banners got in touch with me saying they were kind of, it's like an event. I thought it was a sort of birthday party. But,
okay.
But I just love the sort of ceremony of it and the joy of it, and the fact you've got the moon in the sky poking out, and just the sort of ceremonial nature that the coast can have sometimes. It's
like a Martin Parr, but quite friendly version of Martin Parr.
That's right. Yeah.
You know
I think the Martin Parr just is such a strong work about people in the coast that was another reason where I felt I didn't want to go there, really, because he's sort of done it so well.
Well, that's been absolutely fantastic. I've really enjoyed going through those, and we're going to include a few other pictures in the article associated with this, and we'll ask you for a few captions for those. But I presume there's going to be a book or something at the end of all this as well.
That's right. I'm just trying to figure out how best to go about it, but that definitely, I think the next step will be a narrative book, because ironically I can put that together quicker because I don't have to edit 200 days of photos. But absolutely there will be a photography book, but I think it will be a year away because I've got a lot of Lightroom to do.
Well, hopefully we can keep up with you on that, because I think it might be quite interesting to see how you proceed with it all.
Oh, thanks very much.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Quintin.